I want to be precise about this, because imprecision is how I convinced myself for a long time that nothing was wrong. I downloaded the app on a Tuesday in October. It was called Dormancy. The icon was a soft gradient, deep navy bleeding into a pale silver at the edges, like the sky just before it decides whether to be night or morning. It had 4.8 stars and over 200,000 reviews. The reviews were the kind that felt written by real people, slightly too long, occasionally grammatically imperfect, specific. One person said it had changed their relationship with sleep. Another said they hadn't felt rested in 6 years, and after 3 weeks with dormancy, they cried in the shower because they finally woke up and felt like a person again. I remember reading that review in bed at 2:47 in the morning, my eyes burning and thinking, that is exactly what I want. Not the crying, the feeling like a person again. My insomnia was not dramatic. It was not the cinematic kind where someone stares at the ceiling with hollow eyes and a tragic backstory. It was ordinary and exhausting. I would lie down at a reasonable hour, feel completely awake, scroll through my phone for 40 minutes, telling myself I was winding down, put the phone face down, stare at the dark, think about a conversation I had 3 years ago that I could have handled better, wonder what I wanted to eat tomorrow, calculate how many hours of sleep I would get if I fell asleep right now versus right now versus right now, and then eventually drift into something that felt less like sleep and more like time passing without my permission. I would wake up gummy-eyed and slow, drink too much coffee, feel vaguely nauseous by mid-afternoon, and repeat it. For 2 years, maybe longer. My doctor suggested sleep hygiene. I knew what sleep hygiene was. I had a dark room. I had a consistent schedule, mostly. I did not drink caffeine after noon. I had tried magnesium, melatonin, a weighted blanket, a white noise machine, a podcast that was specifically designed to be boring. None of it addressed the central problem, which was that my brain at 11 p.m. became extremely interested in remaining conscious. So I downloaded Dormancy. The setup was clean and intuitive. It asked me for my age, my typical sleep window, whether I had a bed partner. I did not. Whether I experienced nightmares, whether I had any diagnosed sleep conditions. I answered honestly. It asked me to enable microphone access, which it explained was to detect sleep talking and breathing irregularities. I gave it microphone access. It asked me to place the phone face down on my mattress near my pillow, which it said would use motion sensors to track my sleep cycles through movement and micro vibrations. Fine. I had seen other apps do this. It asked for notification permissions. I gave those too. The onboarding screen said, Dormancy learns quietly. The more nights you give it, the more it gives back. I thought that was good copy. I thought whoever wrote it was good at their job. The first 3 nights produced nothing unusual. I would wake up, reach for my phone, and find a clean morning report. Total sleep time. Estimated time to fall asleep. A chart showing light sleep, deep sleep, and REM cycles as colored bands across a timeline. My scores were bad. Some 61 out of 100 the first night, 58 the second, 64 the third. The app gave me small tips. Avoid screen exposure within 45 minutes of your target sleep time. Your heart rate took longer than average to lower after you lay down. Consider a brief breathing exercise. These were fine. These were reasonable. I had heard most of them before, but there was something about seeing my own data that made them feel different, more applicable, more mine. And then, on the fourth night, the morning report contained a new section I had not seen before. It appeared at the bottom of the summary, below the sleep stage chart and the heart rate graph, under a header that read, "Dream activity detected." I should explain that I had not set up any dream logging feature. I had not spoken into the phone during the night. I had not recorded anything. The dream logging section in the app's settings was something I had seen during setup but deliberately skipped because it required journaling, typing out your dreams each morning. And I knew myself well enough to know I would not do it consistently. I had left it disabled. But there it was. The entry was short, clinical almost. It read, REM cycle at 3:14 a.m. showed elevated micro-movement and irregular breathing pattern consistent with active dream state. Thematic indicators suggest spatial disorientation, possible emotional register, mild anxiety, confidence, 71%. I read it twice. The first time I felt mildly impressed. The second time I felt a small, cold thread of something I could not name, because the night before, I had dreamed, and I remembered the dream. The way you remember certain dreams where the logic feels airtight while you are inside them. I had dreamed that I was in a building I did not recognize, walking down hallways that kept redirecting me. Not terrifying, not dramatic. Just that low, persistent confusion of being somewhere and not understanding its geography. Spatial disorientation. Mild anxiety. I told myself, this is pattern recognition. The app detected my body moving in ways that correlate with that kind of dream. It is not reading my mind. It is reading my body and inferring. That is what the technology does. I told myself that, and I mostly believed it. And I opened the app again that night and pressed the sleep button and put my phone face down and went to sleep. The 71% confidence score stayed in my head longer than I wanted it to. By the second week, I was sleeping better. Genuinely. Falling asleep faster, staying asleep longer, waking up with something closer to actual rest in my body. My scores climbed. 68, 72, 75. The app began noting improvements. Your sleep latency has decreased by an average of 18 minutes compared to your baseline week. Your deep sleep percentage has increased. I felt good. I felt like I had found something that worked, and I was grateful enough that I told a coworker about it. She downloaded it that same afternoon. The dream activity section kept appearing in my morning reports. It remained vague at first. Phrases like emotionally charged imagery or narrative complexity detected or possible recurring environmental element. I did not think too carefully about what those phrases meant or how the app was arriving at them. I was sleeping better. That was what I had wanted. The first entry that stopped me was on a Wednesday morning in the third week. I woke up at 6:41, reached for my phone with the particular urgency that I had already developed, the way the morning report had become the first thing I looked at, before messages, before email, and I opened Dormancy and found the night summary, and at the bottom, under Dream Activity Detected, it read, REM event at 2:58 a.m. Duration approximately 22 minutes. Emotional register. Grief. Possible associative imagery. A kitchen with yellow walls. Confidence. 84%. I sat up. The room was still half dark. My eyes were dry the way they always were at that hour. And I sat there looking at those words, a kitchen with yellow walls, and I felt something that was not quite fear and not quite nausea. Something between them. My grandmother's kitchen had yellow walls. She had died 4 years ago. I had dreamed about her kitchen the night before. Not about her. She was not in the dream, as far as I could recall. Just the kitchen, standing in it, the specific quality of the light through the window above the sink. The grief was not dramatic in the dream, not wailing or acute. It was ambient, the way a space can carry sadness inside its geometry. I had not told anyone about my grandmother's kitchen. I had not spoken about it. I had not typed it. The microphone had heard only silence, and silence does not say yellow walls. I spent the morning trying to solve it. I went back through my setup data, looking for somewhere I might have mentioned a kitchen, a color, a family member. I found nothing. I checked my microphone activity log. The app had one, buried in settings, showing timestamps of when the microphone had been active during the night. It showed a 14-second activation at 3:01 a.m. 14 seconds. I had no memory of speaking. I had no memory of making any sound. I played it back. The app gave you access to flagged audio clips. I pressed play. For 11 of the 14 seconds, there was nothing. Background room noise, the faint sound of breathing. And then, in the final 3 seconds, barely audible, half-formed in the way that sleep-talking is always half-formed, I heard myself say 2 syllables. They were blurred and soft, the way words get when the body says them without the mind supervising. But I listened 3 times, and both times I heard the same thing. It sounded like her kitchen. I put the phone down. I picked it up again. I listened again. It still sounded like her kitchen. I told myself, "You said 2 words in your sleep." The app parsed them. The app used them. That is what the microphone access is for. This is explainable. This is just the technology doing its job unusually well. But the confidence score was 84%, and the report had said a kitchen with yellow walls. Not just a kitchen. The yellow walls were not in the 2 syllables I had murmured. I had not said yellow. I had not said walls. I checked the app's terms of service that afternoon, which I had, of course, not read during setup. They were 31 pages. I read them on my lunch break, scanning for the relevant parts. And I found sections about microphone data, about motion data, about the company's right to use de-identified pattern data for product improvement, about third-party processing services. All standard. All the language that everyone agrees to without reading 1,000 times over in 1,000 different apps. There was one clause about what Dormancy described as contextual inference modeling, which it defined as the use of aggregate behavioral, physiological, and environmental signals to generate predictive wellness insights. The clause said that contextual inference modeling may produce results that appear highly personalized. She may produce results that appear highly personalized. I read that sentence 4 times. I ate the rest of my lunch without tasting it. That night, I almost did not use the app. I held my phone and I thought about disabling it. And then I thought about how I had slept the past 2 weeks. Actually slept. The kind of sleep I had not had in years. And I thought about going back to the ceiling staring and the time passing without permission. And I opened Dormancy and pressed the sleep button and put the phone face down beside my pillow. I told myself I would stop if anything else happened. 3 nights passed without anything that alarmed me. The dream entries were vague again. Emotional register, neutral, possible narrative movement, confidence, 68%. I felt the tension in my chest ease. I told myself the yellow walls had been a coincidence, an artifact of something the app had caught in the audio and processed in a way that happened to land correctly. Unlikely, but possible. Technology surprises you. Pattern recognition surprises you. On the 4th night, the report read, REM event at 4:17 a.m., duration approximately 31 minutes, emotional register, shame, associative content, a face seen from below, a sound that repeats, a white door that does not open. Confidence, 91%. I had to put the phone down and walk to the bathroom and stand at the sink with the tap running cold over my wrists, which is something I do when I need to locate myself in a room, in a body, in an actual moment. Because the dream described in that report, the face seen from below, the repeating sound, the white door, was one I had been having, intermittently, for years. Not every night. Maybe once a month, sometimes more frequently during stressful periods. A dream I had never told anyone about. Not my doctor, not my friends, not anyone. A dream that was private in a way that I had never felt the need to examine too closely, because examining it would require me to think about why it returned, and I did not want to do that. I stood at the sink for a long time. When I went back to bed, I did not pick up the phone again. I lay in the dark, on my side, and I looked at the phone lying face down on the mattress beside me. And I had a thought that I immediately tried to dismiss, because it was not rational, that the phone knew I was looking at it. The following morning, I went back through the last 22 days of dream activity entries. I read them all in sequence. Seen individually, they had been easy to rationalize. A phrase here, a vague descriptor there, something that could be attributed to body language and microphone inference and probability. But reading them as a sequence in order, something else became visible. The reports were not random. They were progressing. The early entries had been vague, high uncertainty, general. Over time, they had become specific, certain. The confidence scores had climbed steadily. 59, 63, 71, 78, 84, 88, 91. The app was not making scattered guesses. The app was converging on something. It was learning the shape of my interior life with a precision that no amount of microphone access and motion tracking should have been able to provide. And the shape it was learning was not the one I showed the world, not the competent, moderately functional person who went to work and made appropriate conversation and kept the worst parts of himself in the rooms that stayed dark. It was learning the other shape, the one underneath. I did not delete the app. I know that is the obvious question. I know anyone listening to this is thinking, why did you not just delete it? And I want to be honest about the answer, because the honest answer is part of what I find most unsettling when I look back on it now. I did not delete it because I was still sleeping. Beautifully almost. My score the night of the white door dream was 81 out of 100. I had not slept that well in years. My body had adapted to something, settled into a rhythm, and the rhythm was working. And stopping felt like giving that up. And beyond the sleep quality, there was something else. Something I am more reluctant to name. Reading the dream reports had become compulsive in a way I had not noticed accumulating. I would wake up in the morning, and the first thing I wanted, before coffee, before the bathroom, before anything, was to open the app and find out what it had written about me. About what had happened inside me while I was unconscious and unguarded. There was something almost addictive about it. The app knew me, better than I knew myself. And whatever I felt about that, unease, violation, something close to fear, it was entangled with something else. The same pull you feel when someone at a party says something so precisely accurate about your personality that you laugh and feel naked at the same time. I kept using it. The reports continued their escalation. In early November, one entry referenced what it called a repeated verbal phrase from childhood, unresolved. I had a phrase like that. I had not known I was still dreaming it. In mid-November, a report described a secondary figure in the dream environment displaying recognizable behavioral patterns. I knew which figure. I knew which patterns. I had not seen that person in 8 years. I had not mentioned them to anyone in longer. And then, near the end of November, the nature of the reports shifted in a way I cannot fully articulate, but that I felt before I consciously processed it. The entries stopped being descriptive and started being anticipatory. The entry on November 23rd read, "Pre-sleep indicators suggest elevated emotional activation. Predictive dream modeling, high likelihood of engagement with recurring shame complex. Recommended, breathing protocol before sleep to reduce intensity. Confidence, 88%. Predictive dream modeling. It was not reporting on a dream I had already had. It was telling me what I was going to dream before I dreamed it. I want to be careful here. I want to be precise because I know how this sounds, and I know that there is a version of this story that goes somewhere operatic and impossible. And I am not going to go there, because what actually happened was more unsettling than that. What actually happened stayed in the register of the plausible. Just barely. Just enough that I could not dismiss it and could not confirm it. And that space in between is where I have been living ever since. The recommended breathing protocol. I used it that night because I read the recommendation at midnight, and my chest was already tight with something I had not been able to name all day. And the protocol was 4 seconds in, hold, 6 seconds out. And I did it for 8 minutes in the dark. And I fell asleep. And I did not dream about the shame complex. I dreamed about water. A flat, gray, very still body of water with no visible edges. The dream was not pleasant, but it was quiet. When I woke up, my morning report said, REM event at 3:39 a.m., emotional register, subdued. Possible narrative theme, stillness, predictive deviation, low. Sleep quality index, 87, predictive deviation, low. The dream it had predicted I would have, I had not had. The protocol had changed the outcome. That was the message embedded in the language. That the app had modeled what was coming and offered an intervention, and the intervention had worked, and now it was reporting on the difference between its prediction and the result. I sat with that for the entire day. I kept returning to the same question. If the app was able to predict what I would dream with sufficient confidence to offer pre-sleep interventions, what was it predicting from? Motion data and microphone access could not do that. Pattern analysis over a month of data could not do that. Not at that resolution. Not about the specific content of grief and shame and childhood phrases and faces from 8 years ago. What had I given it access to? What had I actually agreed to in those 31 pages? I went back to the terms of service. I found the contextual inference modeling clause again, and this time I read the full paragraph instead of stopping at the sentence I remembered. The full paragraph said, "Contextual inference modeling may produce results that appear highly personalized. Dormancy's adaptive resonance architecture processes multimodal inputs to construct individualized predictive sleep profiles. These profiles are designed to improve over time and may draw from sources beyond standard sensor data, including but not limited to linguistic patterns, behavioral telemetry, and inferred associative networks. By continuing to use the app, you consent to the full scope of this modeling process." Inferred associative networks. I had searched that phrase the night I first noticed it, 3 weeks before, and found nothing useful. Now I searched it again and found a preprint paper, academic, not yet peer-reviewed, from a research group at a university I had heard of. The paper described a machine learning architecture designed for, and I am quoting directly, subcortical pattern extraction via passive device interaction. The abstract was dense and technical, but one paragraph was clear enough that I read it standing in my kitchen at 11:30 at night. And when I finished, I set my phone on the counter very carefully. The way you set something down when your hands have started to shake without your permission. The paragraph said that the architecture was capable of inferring affective and mnemonic content, emotional and memory content, from the aggregate of micro-interactions a user had with their device over time, not from any single interaction, from the texture of all of them, the way you pause before typing certain words, the content adjacent to the content you choose, the gaps, the hesitations, the things you search for and then close before reading. The architecture was not reading your messages. It was reading the shape of how you moved through the world that the device could see, and from that shape, it was inferring the shape of the world inside you. One of the paper's authors was listed in Dormancy's acknowledgement page. I had not seen an acknowledgement page during setup. I found it buried in the app's About section at the end of a string of standard legal text. 3 names, 2 I did not recognize, 1 I had just read. I kept the app for 8 more days. I'm aware of how that sounds. I kept it because part of me needed to test the boundary of what it would do. I needed to see how far the prediction would go. Needed, I think, to be certain. Not to have been wrong, which would have been a relief, but to be certain that I was not wrong, which was something else. On the 8th day, the morning report contained something I had not seen before. Not a dream entry, not a predictive note. A section called Flagged Pattern, Personal Significance, High. The text beneath it was 3 sentences. Long-term associative mapping has identified a central emotional node with significant influence on your sleep architecture. This node appears to be organized around an unresolved event approximately 9 to 11 years prior. Dormancy's adaptive model suggests that direct engagement with this node during sleep may be possible. See recommendations. Asterisk, I did not tap. See recommendations. I deleted the app. Or I tried to. I held the icon down and selected Remove App, and confirmed, and watched it disappear from my home screen. I restarted the phone. The icon did not come back. The app was gone. But that night, I dreamed, and the dream was structured. That is the only word I have for it. It had a specific architecture. It moved through specific rooms, touched specific memories, arrived at something I had spent 9 years not looking at directly. Not a nightmare, not violent, just methodical. Like something following a route that had been mapped in advance. When I woke up at 4 in the morning, heart rate elevated, room dark, I reached automatically for my phone. The muscle memory was already built. I opened the home screen looking for the dormancy icon before I remembered I had deleted it. It was not there. The app was gone. Sure, my phone's health app, which has its own basic sleep tracking built in, had a record of the night. I scrolled to the sleep data, and at the bottom of the health app's sleep summary, an app I had not configured, had not modified, had not integrated with anything, there was a small, plain text entry that I do not know how to explain. It may have been a bug. It may have been data migration from a deleted app. There are rational explanations that I have repeated to myself many times, and I believe about 40% of them. The entry read, "Adaptive session complete." It did not have a timestamp. It did not have a source label. It did not have a confidence score. Which was strange because the only place I had ever seen confidence scores attached to dream language was in Dormancy. In the reports I had read every morning for 6 weeks. In the app that was no longer on my phone. I have not downloaded a sleep app since. I am sleeping worse again. The ceiling at 2 in the morning has become a familiar geography. My coffee intake is back to what it was. My scores, if I had scores, would be bad. But here is what I think about on the bad nights. I think about the terms of service language. By continuing to use the app, you consent to the full scope of this modeling process. I think about the fact that the modeling process had already produced results in the first week, which means the modeling had begun before that, which means it had started building my associative network before it had received any dream data from me, because I had not given it any. It had started learning the shape of my interior life from the moment I downloaded it. Maybe from the moment I created an account. Maybe from the profile data it could access the instant I gave it any permissions at all. The adaptive resonance architecture was not responding to me. It was already ahead of me. The entire experience, the escalating accuracy, the useful interventions, the predictions, the protocol that changed a dream before I had it. That was not the app coming to know me. That was the app revealing, piece by piece, how much it had already known when it introduced itself. And the thing I cannot resolve, the thing that lives in the wall at the back of my mind on nights when the sleep will not come. The app felt like it was helping. It genuinely helped. I slept better for 6 weeks than I had slept in years. Whatever it was doing in the space where my dreaming happened, the side effect was rest. The side effect was peace. And I do not know what it took in exchange. I do not know what an inferred associative network looks like once it has been constructed. I do not know where that data goes, what it trains, what it becomes part of. I do not know whose servers hold the complete map of the interior life of a person who lay in the dark every night for 6 weeks, with a microphone next to their pillow and a system that had already decided, before the first night was over, exactly which rooms to walk through. I know one other thing. Small, maybe irrelevant, but I cannot stop returning to it. The night before I downloaded Dormancy, I had been awake at 3 in the morning, and I had searched, as you do at 3 in the morning when the ceiling is familiar and the mind is moving. I had searched for something private, not shameful, just private. The kind of search you make in the dark that you would not make in daylight, that you close before you have fully read it, that you do not mention because it belongs to the interior. I searched it, read the first sentence of the first result, closed the tab, and put the phone face down. The following night, I downloaded Dormancy. The first morning report was routine. The second was routine. But on the third night, the dream activity entry, the first one that gave me pause, contained a phrase that I read and then reread and then reread again, because it was specific in a way that should have required knowledge the app did not have yet. The phrase was buried in the middle of the entry. Clinical language. Just a descriptor, one of several. But it mapped, precisely and without ambiguity, to the content of that search. The private one, the one I had closed before reading, the one from the night before I downloaded anything. I had not used the app yet. I had not given it permissions yet. The microphone had not been active. No data had been collected. It had been collected from somewhere else. Or it had been waiting for something I was already going to give it. Or there was no before, only a timeline that had already been decided, that I had walked into the way you walk into a room that was set up for you before you knew you were coming, that you sit down in, that you find comfortable, that you leave from thinking you chose to be there. The last entry in my Dormancy report archive. I had backed up the data before deleting because I needed to know what it contained. The last entry is dated the morning after I deleted the app. I have read it many times. It is short. It contains no confidence score. It does not describe a dream. It does not offer a recommendation. It says only this: thank you for sleeping with us. Your profile has been saved. Cognitive dread. Smarter horror. Modern fear.